Gotham Season 3, Episode 4, New Day Rising. I really love this episode. We got to see a lot of cool changes that are going to affect the rest of the season, possibly the rest of the series, depending on, whatever the cutoff point is for the show. And we got to see some cool stuff in this episode with Penguin and Riddler. I really love that. They gave Riddler, it was like a really dark green, but he had like it was green stripes in his suit. So I was like, that's really cool. It was a bit subtle. It wasn't, the typical bright green that we're kind of used to from the Riddler. So I was like, that's really awesome. We got to, they threw the green in there. And I didn't know what was going to happen with the whole Butch and Riddler thing, because in the promo it was like, alright, they showed that scene where Butch pulled the gun on him. And I was like, okay, I don't remember them having any issues in the past. I was like, maybe I just forgot. But as the episode went on, I was like, oh, maybe he's actually doing something behind Penguin's back, because I thought it was weird when the season started up that they seemed to be partners again, but Penguin seemed to be in charge. And I was like, that seems weird to me that would happen, because Butch was still in charge of his own thing and Penguin was in charge of his stuff. So I was like, oh, it seems weird that Penguin would somehow come out on top between the two of them. So I was like, maybe he is doing something behind the scenes, and they have the scene and everything where he's at the bar and he's like, once Penguin runs the city, we'll be in charge. Or, once he's elected mayor, we'll run the city and stuff like that. So I was like, maybe he is actually doing something. But, they had it where I was like, no, Penguin knew what was going on. And, Ed, he had an interesting plan. And it's what I really enjoyed about their storyline in this episode, where he's going through and he's like, I needed you to see that the town, the city of Gotham actually does love you. Like, you don't have to buy their respect or buy their winnings. You can win on your own, and he does. And I thought it was funny how Penguin kind of turned at the end, where instead of accepting the fact that Ed was helping him, and he's like, oh, you helped me realize something that I didn't think was there, I felt he undeservedly turned on Butch, and he was like, oh, you're so right. And then he instantly was like, maybe you aren't cut out for this. And I was kind of like, Butch, he was like, are you kidding? I was like, man, that's kind of effed up. Like, he basically was doing exactly what you thought. Like, you yourself thought you couldn't win without buying people. I'm pretty sure Penguin was the one that came up with the idea. It may have been Butch that first came up with the idea to kind of grease the wheel, but Penguin himself was the one who was like, I can't possibly win without people paying for it, or, without me paying people to help me win. So I thought he turned on Butch a little too far. I was like, that's kind of messed up that he turned on him so hard when, it was just weird. I was like, he put too much of what Ed felt onto Butch, even though he felt exactly the same way as Butch. And I'm like, it's kind of unfair to be like, oh, this friend thought I could do it without the money, and you didn't, so you suck. But I also didn't think I could win, but it's me, so I'm fine. So he had like a weird double standard for himself and Butch, and I was like, oh, that's really unfair. So I'm not sure how things are going to play out. I don't know if Butch is going to snap and try to kill, the Riddler, but it's going to be nuts. So I don't really know what to expect, but, we have the Riddler's chief of staff. I can't wait to see how that plays out, especially with their promo. They already had the scene where he goes to the GCPD, so I'm super excited for the next episode. Based on what they showed in the promo, it seems like a very intense episode next week, so I'm super excited for that. But I love what we got to see for this, and I was like, alright, he's going to be the new chief of staff. Penguin is he's the mayor of Gotham, so that's insane. So there's a lot of madness going on there, and we still have, of course, all their old ties to, the crazy stuff. They still have their attachment to Barbara and Tabitha and stuff. So there's still a lot there, and I'm excited to see how it all kind of blends together with, Mayor Oswald Cobblepot, and then, the Penguin side of him, and how those two sides come together with the rest of the city. So I'm excited for that. The second half of this sort of Mad Hatter arc, I really enjoyed as well. I think I actually like this one more than I like the first one, because we got to see a lot of the after effects, especially with Jim, where even though Jervis, whose name I was saying wrong the whole time in my last review, I kept calling him that, but it's Tetch. But Jervis, he implants basically a little bug, inside of Jim, and every time he hears the ticking, no matter, where it's at, he'll basically go into like a weird suicide mode, And they talk about it a lot, and it actually attaches a lot to the overarching story of Lee and Jim, which I don't really know. I mentioned that before. I was like, I don't know how this will play out. I think maybe Jim might fall for her, or she might fall for him. And, she still cares about him. He was trying to do the whole, oh, it's in the past, whatever sort of deal. But she's like, no, it was in the past, but it was still important. And, they have their moment where they talk, and she's like, I went through, like, the most horrible thing, and I did it by myself, because that's when he was in prison. And she mentioned, like, I was so hopeful, like, every day you would come back, or something like that. And I remember thinking, like, she kind of gave up, didn't she? Because she knew he was in prison, so it'd be like, someone's in prison. It's not like she knew when he was getting out and he never showed up. It was like she didn't know when he'd get out of prison. And she didn't really stick around to find out when he got out, which I think was actually fairly quick when it happened. I mean, I know they skipped like a couple of weeks when he actually ended up going to prison. When, those couple of episodes, they mentioned it like, oh, it had been a couple of weeks or whatever. So maybe it had been a month, and then, she took off after what happened and everything. But I'm like, he got out fairly fast. Like, when Jim went to meet Bullock and he found out what happened with the baby, they're like, oh, yeah, that was like a week ago or something. They lost the baby and she left. So he got out like days after that, and then that was like the end of the season basically. It was like another couple of days, and then the season was over. So I'm like, she didn't wait that long, to get with somebody else. Like, when she was kind of explaining it, like, she made it seem like she was just alone for months and months, but they kind of made a point of saying, like, oh, he'd been there for, like, a couple of weeks, but it's not like he was in there for, he wasn't in prison for 3 months or anything. He was there for, like, a couple of weeks. So I was like, I feel like she, as much as she's kind of expressed it, I'm like, she still kind of gave up a little fast. Like, she knew he was in prison. It's not like he just wasn't around to show up. And he took the time. He did try to find her and everything, so I don't know. That was just me, like, when she was explaining it. I was like, she knew he was in prison. Like, it's not like he would just give up on that. So I just thought that was interesting when she was explaining it. But she still cares for him, and, he tries to, just push it to the wayside, like, oh, whatever, it was in the past, I don't give a crap. But as he goes through, he realizes that pain that he has where he's trying to push it aside, and that just makes it worse. That's kind of what's helping Jervis actually keep him in trance. So he ends up breaking that at the end of the episode, which is a nice little scene. It was kind of messed up because, of course, they go through the shootout, and Jervis, who we find out was actually way worse than I thought. I thought, he's just a killer who mind controls people, but he also has, like, this crazy sexual attachment to his sister, so that was weird when they introduced that. But she ends up dying in a really gruesome way where she falls off she, like, breaks through the railing and gets, like, impaled, and she's just dead. I was like, well, that really sucks. And of course he lost his mind. It's like, you killed her. And he went pretty hardcore in this episode. He hires the Terrible Tweeds, as they call them. They put a lot more Alice in Wonderland references in this episode too, which I really enjoyed. So the Terrible Tweeds were meant to be a reference to Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Of course, Alice herself, he put her in, like, the blue and white dress. So I was like, okay, they did that. He had the whole dinner table set up. Early on in the episode, they have Barbara mention that Jervis might be somewhere where people wear a bunch of top hats and drink tea and stuff. So I was like, alright, they put way more references to Alice in Wonderland in this episode than they did, even in the last one. So I like that, but her death was kind of messed up. I was very surprised it happened that way. I kind of wasn't sure what to expect. I figured something would happen to her, but I didn't think it would be, it wasn't really even in the chaos, to be totally honest. Like, they just had their moment where they were talking back and forth, and he was freaking out, like, I love you and stuff, and then she kind of just fell backwards. It didn't even seem like she fell. It seemed like she just threw herself backwards almost, but, she screamed, so she fell. But I was like, alright, that sucks. She got, she gets killed, she gets impaled. And then that leads to the ending of the episode where we have our, police chief who knows about this stuff because of the scene with Jim when he talks to Alice, where it's like, what's going on with me? And they, especially when they're inside the police station, he realizes that something's going on. So we have our, commissioner infected now, and he knows he's infected, and it seems to be minor because with the other people that were infected, it seemed like a bunch of blood, or maybe it was I guess just the location. I mean, because it was like one drop in his eyeball compared to like the one dude who kissed her in the last episode, where it was like he ingested it basically. So I don't know exactly how that's supposed to play out, but I'm excited to see where they take that. I don't know what to really expect from it, but I hope they don't go the generic route where people are always infected or something's wrong and they try to hide it from everybody else. Hopefully, and this seems like his character. He's so by the book. I would love to see it where he just did the logical thing. It was like, hey, I don't know what's happening to me. I'm infected. I can slightly control it because, I guess it was just the drop of blood, so I can kind of control it. I know what's happening, but I get these urges or whatever to kind of just go nuts and maybe kill people, but they do mention it affects everybody differently. So we might see something different from his character. Maybe he'll go sort of vigilante style, and he'll stop going by the book, and maybe that'll be their reason to make it where he actually hides it from people, which still would be a bit cliche, but at least it would be a good reason instead of I just want to hide it because I'm scared or something like that, which doesn't make a lot of sense, especially in shows like this where people like they deal with superpowers and all this crazy stuff, and then they're like, oh no, I'm affected by one of the million things we've dealt with a million different times, but I'm still gonna hide it. So in this case, it could work if that's how it affects him. It's like he doesn't decide to go by the book and he just hides it, and maybe it'll make him stronger, so he won't have to use the cane anymore. He won't feel that pain or something like that. That would be interesting. So I don't know where they're headed with it, but I'm excited to see that. We have also towards the end of the episode exactly what I thought was going to happen with the clone Bruce Wayne. Like he goes through his whole thing. They have the cool little scene with him and Selina, and she realizes that he's not Bruce and stuff, and they end up kissing. And so Selina takes off, and they have Bruce and Alfred end up seeing the clone and stuff, and he's like, all right, well, I'm kind of taking off. I'm out of here. And of course, the Court of Owls comes in. He's finally off on his own. And the Court of Owls, they kind of just stroll up. And we see the main woman. I forgot her name because she does say her real name. But she strolls up, and, the bodyguard dude, and they knock him out, and it's like, you could be Bruce Wayne and so much more. And I'm like, yep, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. So no surprise there. The Court of Owls has found him. And they even mentioned that they were specifically looking for him for a while. So they knew he was out there. They were flat out looking for him. And now they have him. And so I assume that they're going to do exactly what I thought was going to happen, which is, we got our clone who looks just like Bruce Wayne. We'll just go ahead and kill Bruce Wayne now because we don't need him. So, the deal we made means nothing, which once they make that first attempt, which I'm assuming is going to fail, Bruce is going to realize, oh, they're trying to kill me now. So the deal is broken. Like for whatever reason, they decided to break our deal and come after me. So now I can go back into investigating them because they started it up and, not me. So I think that's how things are going to play out. I don't know what to expect from the clone. Like, he seemed kind of neutral as far as, actually being Bruce. Like, he kind of had that moment and, him kissing Selina, which was a hilarious scene with Bruce and Alfred at the end. I love that scene where he's like, do you think Selina kissed him because she thought he was me? And he's like, all right, well, I'm not going to talk about this. And he basically just gets up and leaves and is like, good night, see you, enjoy your tea, and he takes off. So I love that scene. I thought it was really funny. But, he seemed fairly neutral. It was just like, I wanted to be you, and I kind of had that experience for a day or whatever. But, whatever. I don't really need this. I'll take off and go somewhere else. But now he knows he can take over 100%. There won't be any sort of iffy things about it. It's like, nope, we'll get rid of him, and we'll put you in his place, and you can be him 100%. Minus the scars, which would be the obvious thing, which Selina found out in this episode. So they might do some surgery on that, like, oh, this will out me or whatever, because he doesn't have scars or something. But I thought it was interesting. I called it, but I'm still excited to see exactly where they take it and really how far things go. Because they have this bodyguard who, when he went up against Alfred, that was a pretty crazy scene, and he ended up coming out on top there. So, excuse me. So I don't know who they're going to get to take him down. Maybe they'll have to get two people to take him down and have, like, Alfred and Jim both fight him together, which I would love to see that because we don't get too much hand-to-hand combat in this show, which is one of my favorite parts, especially because Alfred, is actually very cool, which we did get some in this episode, like I mentioned, and that was pretty fun. But I don't know how they're going to get rid of that character. Somebody's going to have to, like, fight him or just shoot him, if he's not, like, dodging bullets and stuff, which I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that where he knows when someone's going to pull the trigger and he's got like a spidey sense going. But I really enjoyed that. I was like, alright, I figured this would happen, but now I'm excited to see where they take it, because I don't know how far it's going to go or how fast, they're really going to play around with it, because there's so many other storylines to show off. So, very excited about it. Really enjoyed this episode. Thought it was a good second half for the Mad Hatter. Kind of sad ending where Alice actually ends up dying in the end. I was like, oh, well, that really sucks for her, because I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know if she'll just be able to take off, kind of like Clone Bruce did. I was like, all right, maybe she'll just take off kind of like he did. But sadly, she ends up dying. So, it was hardly even bittersweet. It was, I mean, she died, and I mean, I guess they got him, but still, it's kind of like, like it's still just kind of like, meh. That still really sucks. So, I don't know. It was an interesting ending. Of course, like I said, it led to whatever, crazy commissioner, vigilante commissioner, who knows. But I'm excited to see where they take things. Of course, definitely want to know what you guys thought about the episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I actually want to know what you guys think is going to happen to the commissioner, because it's kind of hard to tell with his character, and them talking about like, oh, it affects everybody differently. It's not necessarily it affects you, where it's like you're the opposite of what you were, but as Alice mentions, like, my brother believes that it brings out everyone's true nature. So that would be interesting to see, what his true nature is. I can't think of his name, that's why I've just been calling him the commissioner the whole time, if that wasn't obvious. But I don't know what to expect, really. I mean, the first reaction he had after, he kind of calmed down, the first thing he says is no, because he's like, basically like, crap, I'm infected now, and we don't know what the cure is, which I assume that they can actually test, because they had the scene where the Mad Hatter was taking all those vials, so I'm sure that's in evidence somewhere, and it's like, crap, I've been infected. Fortunately, we just so happen to have like 6 vials, of her blood, plus the stuff that they already had at the GCPD, so they have a lot of her DNA, so they can still do that, and they might extract more before it's too late, from within her body. So that might actually be something that they can do, but I'm sure it won't just be solved in the next episode. That might be like a 2 or 3 episodes down the line sort of deal, and eventually he'll be cured. But I just feel like it'll be the vigilante thing, because he's always so tough, but he's like, I would love to do this, and that's how he always seems. Like, I would love to do it this way, but we have to do it by the book, and that's how he always plays it. So I think he'll be going a little off the rails. Like I said, that might be their explanation as to why he doesn't tell people he's infected, if they decide to go that route as well, which personally I still hope they don't, because I would love to see the idea of him kind of going rogue a little bit, and everyone knowing why he's going rogue. So it's like, alright, we got to get you out of there. They kind of go back to Bullock being commissioner for a little bit longer, because that was something they seem to be hinting at in the premiere of this season, where he's like, yeah, I was really good when that happened, and he's actually a good leader to the GCPD. So I feel like that's something they could do, which I personally enjoy to see. And we get to see Bullock and maybe Lucius, who sadly didn't show up in this episode. I was really hoping for that, because they spent a ton of time at the GCPD, and I was like, I can't wait to see Lucius show up, because this kind of seemed like the perfect episode where we have a character who messes with people's minds. Lucius seemed like the perfect person to come in for that sort of scenario. And that didn't end up happening. And they even had the thing in the last episode where it was like, oh, Alfred mentioned, we'll talk with Lucius tomorrow, or whatever he said. And that didn't end up happening either. So I was like, oh, that really sucks. I was actually really expecting to see him, considering that's where he works now. And he didn't show up again. So I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. I thought he would have fit perfectly into a sort of psychological sort of villain episode. But sadly, he doesn't appear. Well, I'm sure we'll get more of him and the Riddler, which I can't wait to see that. But, maybe we'll get to see Bullock as commissioner. I went off on a weird tangent there, but I just was hoping to see Lucius. But maybe we'll get to see more of Bullock as the commissioner while he's a temporary replacement and stuff until everything's, figured out. But like I said, I definitely want to know where you guys think it's headed. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.